um, young people here. Thank you guys for coming.
That's
I
right.
appreciate it. And we have Howard Hardy, who lives in Oakland, but he is an axe man and knows all there is to know about these axes, or will let us know that he
Very
does.
good.
So thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it.
It's fun. I was here about 10 years ago,
Yeah.
and so like it's kind of like home ground to me. I've been in Oakland Historical Society for many years, taking different positions. This is kind of like a hobby of mine because it's forgotten history. And one person said to me one day, they said, well, they know that you eat and sleep and breathe axes, but I said, that's kind of a slam. And I says, but who put Oakland on the map? And Oakland was put on the map by the axe companies because at one time they were the axe and scythe capital of the world. So what I've done is I've done different historical societies. I've been here, I've been to Bingham, Skowhegan, Clinton. Augusta was one of the most rewarding, and I've done different videos like for Channel 7, the local cable TV in Fairfield, and their budget was cut a while ago and they still are playing that same video when I did a presentation at the library. So there's been many different types of films and videos out. I was featured in the Memories of Maine magazine a couple of years ago, and that still has a widespread circulation as far as people say, oh yeah, I remember. And then recently, I was asked this last fall to do a photo shoot and a interview. And I says, okay, I'll follow up on that. And it was supposed to be September and October, and they didn't get back to me, and I got a little worried because I asked them what they wanted, and they wanted as many axes as they could get in one picture. Oh, as many as you got. And I said, well, I got 300 or more. But the problem is, in the wintertime, I have to store them, and I have to wrap them and oil them or whatever, and it's a little bit harder to get to. So I said, well, so September went by, October went by, November came, and I contacted the person. Oh, no, we're still going to do it. And I said, well, you know, we'll do what we can. So Christmas went by, and no, it's not going to happen. So I was getting a little bit worried, but not concerned, because sometimes things fall through the cracks. And so the first week in January, I got this call. Oh yeah, wow, you want to still do that interview? And I says, yeah, well, and I says, it's going to be limited on, what I can do. And so I had like 24 hours notice, and I hauled axes and pulled them out of the crates and got them set up at the museum in Oakland because they wanted it in a barn setting or something. And in the wintertime, you're not going to find that type of place to display everything. So I did downstairs in the museum and climbing up and downstairs and taking this and taking that. And I worked for like many hours. Well, I got it set up and I was pretty pleased. And so they showed up and they did a wonderful job. And that is for Down East Magazine. And it will be coming out next month. But the way that they do it, it doesn't come out until like the middle of the month. So that's quite an honor. So there's little things that, you keep doing and you get so much, just different people here today. You get so much more interesting little artifacts that come in. People say, oh, you give out a business card. And then I get new items that come in. So it's a lot of fun. One of the things, and where we got some younger kids here today, I want to show you, you all know the Maine seal, right? Okay, who's on the Maine seal? A farmer and a fisherman, right? So what's the farmer have? He has a scythe blade, which is to honor and to show the manufacture of scythe blades. So Oakland was known as the axe and scythe capital of the world at one point. Probably the earlier history shows that they listed scythes first and axes second. In the 1880s, 4 out of 5 people were farmers. Now that doesn't mean that they had 500 cows or whatever. They probably had 2 or 3 cows, a horse, a few chickens, a pig, and whatnot, but that's the lifestyle. By 1920s, it had changed around so that 4 out of 5 were in the city, and farming had declined a little bit as far as people were self-sufficient. So the side blades, and I did not bring one today, but everybody knows, like you're reaping wheat or whatever. Just out of curiosity, they made them anywhere from like 8-10 inches long for bramblewood or blueberry bushes or underbrush. They also made them up to like 36 to 38 inches and sometimes 40 inches in length. But what's the longest side blade that they ever made? 13.5 feet.
Wow.
And everybody says, wow. And it took at least 2 people to manufacture it, to make it, because it was so long and cumbersome. What did they use it for? Well, you kind of think back a little bit in the 1880s to 1900. Maine used to export so much ice. To get clear ice, you had to have clear water. So they would drag this monstrous blade between 2 boats through the water, and it would cut out all of the underwater debris, water lilies and reeds and different things. So when the water froze, you got clearer ice because you had clearer water. But see, they had to adapt for the times, in just like farming. Farming comes along, and people used to use like a little hand sickle. But when mechanized farming comes along, and the reaper came out, and different modern pieces of equipment, they did away with the hand size, the long size mowing hayfields, because it was much faster, more efficient. So a lot of it was they had to rethink and redesign and adapt to changing needs. And that's one of the things that in the late 60s, early 70s, when the axe companies went out, is because they had failed to modernize and go to a drop forged type axe that was a better axe, if you want to think of it as better. It didn't hold as edge as good as the older type, because people didn't use axes as much. Why? Well, they had chainsaws, they had other mechanical means of harvesting wood that they didn't have to rely on an axe as much. Early on, before 1900, these woodsmen that would go in the woods, when they go to camp, they'd sleep with their axe side of the bed. It was their bread and butter, because, you know, it's how they made a living. So, when you move on to the different types of axes, there are many types and patterns. One of the best ways I think I can show you is when you put a handle in an axe. Well, let me show you one of these bigger axes first. This is the 1880s type style of an axe. This is a Hubbard and Blake, West Waterville, Maine. Pretty cumbersome. Use this all day long. 6-7 pounds. You get tired, you know. But how could they make it better? Well, they could make it better by using less metal. They could make it better by experimenting. And these were people that, you know, always trying to make the best better, so-called making a better mousetrap. And what they found was by putting less weight onto the axe, but balancing the handle in the axe. In other words, if you took and you put the handle in too far up here, it's like taking just a stick and just hitting it. You know you're going to break the stick. But if you did it the same way down on the other side, you would do the same thing of breaking the axe handle. So what happens is, if you could balance it so you get the right proportion of weight on the top and on the bottom, then the shock or the sting would go into the axe handle, and then it would be a more efficient way of manufacturing. And less weight, less cost, but a lot less tiresome. You got a lot more work done for the day. So things were good when they evolved, you know, through the years. This is one of my favorite axes. This is a King axe tool, and it's very good condition with the paper label still on it. But this one here is a little bit unique in that it has welding designs on the head, And we think that it was more experimental than anything because we only find a few of these. But what we think is if you use an axe, and everybody used it as a hammer on the backside to drive a fence post or a stake or something, but when you'd hit it, it would glance off. But by welding these strips on there, it would make it rough enough so that it was a lot more safer. And this is like, you know, kind of our guess as to why it's happened. We don't really know. But each company, there was 21, 22 different axe companies in Oakland. A lot of them was just in competition with each other. They weren't in business all at the same time because some were progressions and they would buy out and then it would go into a different name. But a lot of it was just competition, and they would always try to do something better. So like, for example, Emerson Stevens would make a standard pattern like this and they would just bang them out all day long. That was their forte. That's what they were known for. Then there was other companies that would do the specialty axes, as we call them. The fire axe, the pickaxe. This here is a sleeper axe. This is a sleeper axe because it's used to carve out railroad ties. And you think back in those days, it took like, I can't remember, but I'm thinking it's like over 3,000 railroad ties per mile of track that they had to carve out. And it took, this was all done by hand. And these were done with a wider blade. There's some that are a lot wider. There's some that I've got up there that's smaller. But what they did is it would take you, if you worked like a 10 to 12 hour day, the going rate was it would take you an hour to do a tie. You had to do 10 ties a day. And you think about how many thousands it took for railroads because everybody was building railroads. And this was before automobiles. It took a tremendous amount of work, all hand done. So you owe, the next time you see an axe, you owe a lot of your grandparents and everything for all of their hard work. This one here is a little bit different. And like I said, specialty axes. Does anybody want to take a stab at what this one might be for? This is a shoe block lasting axe, or a shoe lasting block axe for making shoe blocks. Now we've got pictures and we've done a little bit of history, and up in northern Maine they used primarily...
Can you turn it sideways so we can...
Yep.
Thank you.
And this would be, and the purpose of the handle is to have something, because it's a one-handed axe, you do it up close and you catch your little finger on that so it wouldn't slip off and slide off, because this would be still like a 3.5 pound axe. Did they make a little bit different sizes? Yes. But we've got pictures up in northern Maine where they would go out into the woods and they'd primarily use maple, because you wouldn't use birch or you wouldn't use softwood. And they would sit them in a circle and they'd put like stumps around and the guys would sit on them and one guy would feed them all these chunks of wood. And this is what they did all day long, is they would carve out or rough carve out these shoe lasting blocks that you would put onto a form, and then you'd put your tacks on as you stretched your leather on over it. Well, it does a lot of labor intensive. And they used to ship these by the carloads, railroad carloads, off to Massachusetts, because Massachusetts was one huge shoe manufacturers. So everything had its kind of like purpose. This one here, a little bit different, another axe company that made specialty axes. This is a ice hatchet. It would have the pick on the back, it doesn't have the handle, but it's a long, slender one so that, you know, you cut through your ice and whatnot. It has certain advantages. Did they make a little bit different variations? Yes. So, and this company, Spiller, also made a lot of ice picks because they did ice harvesting, and then long pole with a pick on it that would pull it through, and days that, we got little kids here, but they just, even my age, I can't imagine, because I wasn't in a generation that we harvested ice. We always had a refrigerator, ice maker, and it's like, but you got to go back, and it's like some of the things that you see in you know. And then this one, a little bit different, a little heavier because of the purpose of it. This is a John King out of Oakland, Maine. This is about an 1880s, 1890, 1900 axe. This is slightly beveled, and it's, in other words, curved off. It would have taken a curved handle. It has a bevel or sharpening only on one side. This is a hewing axe, almost like a sleeper axe, in that when you hew timbers out, you want to square them out, and you'd take the timber and you'd lay it down, and of course it's round, but you got to flatten the sides out on both sides, and then you'd probably turn around and run down the other side, turn the log over and square that timber up. You see some of these hemlock timbers that were built, you know, when you framed a house years ago, and it's just incredible, and I'm sure that the labor on those was a long process. Then I can go into this a little bit. This is a marlin spike or a fid. Now, as the axe companies were going along and they began to decline a little bit after the 30s and 1940s, they started having to make and retool the industry to make for the government. One thing then, they didn't have to send the guys into World War II, into the wars. So what they did was they would retool, and they made this being a fid, it's flattened down here. You put a rope on there, tie it either around your waist or around your arm or something. They use them on ships. They used them on ships to untie knots for sailors' riggings. And these are also available in wood, but this one is marked Catco. These don't come up too often, but they also made torpedo nets. They made chain links for ships' anchors and different things because they had the iron and steel. All you had to do is just retool a little bit. A lot of the axe companies had declined enough so that they was down to probably 30 to 40 people, where they used to be 60 to 70 employees pre-1900. We have some companies that were in business 5-10 years. We have some companies that were in business. Emerson Stevens, for example, was in business for 102 years. Not in the same owner, but they carry the name. So I got this axe from South China, not too far from here. The guy had it on the internet, and I paid an enormous amount for this because this one is marked Emerson Stevens, and they got their start in 1870. So I got this axe because it says West Waterville on it. I have never, ever, ever seen an Emerson Stevens marked West Waterville. Later in the years, they would have marked them Oakland. So I bought this on the internet, and the guy lives in South China, and he messaged me. He says, well, you're going to come down, Howard, and pick it up? I go, no. You're going to mail it? Oh, okay. Mailed it. You know why? Because the post office in Oakland on Water Street is the exact spot where Emerson Stevens' factory was. And I wanted it to go full circle, coming back to its birthing place, so that I could go and open it there in the parking lot when I went down and picked it up at the post office. And I said, there, this is where you were born 140 years ago. It's the little things, you know, that you get into, but it's funny. It just brings them full circle. Yes?
I'm surprised they're allowed to send an axe to the mail, because I heard you can't go in the post office with a gun or a knife.
I carried an axe out of the post office, but they didn't know that it was an axe because it was done up.
And when I was a tenant, my last year of high school, when I worked for the janitor, I bought an axe at Huzzy Hardware. The bus driver wouldn't let me bring it on the bus. The vice principal let me leave it in Harold's office overnight. Harold said they wouldn't let them do that today.
Yeah, I did a talk at the Oakland Junior High School for the gifted students, and they were sharp as tacks. They were 4th and 5th graders, and I had to get permission to take some axes in, and they come back and they told me yes, but they met me at the door. They escorted me in, and I told them how many I would bring. I would only bring 5 to 6. Piece of cake, because they knew the purpose of, you know, what I was doing. So yeah.
What year did wood splitters come out?
That I'm not sure, because there was some before 1900. They were much cruder than the ones we see today with gasoline engines. But yeah, but
I want to mention about the ice harvest. There's a museum in Bristol that still does one every year.
Yeah.
It's an ice house.
Yeah.
Really?
Yes, down in southern Maine, and they usually put an ad in some magazines, and you can have volunteers that go in and take, you know, help out, and they're always doing it. It's just a small operation. They do it like one day of the Yeah.
Winter, and then in the summer,
Yep.
they pull the ice out and make ice cream out of it.
Yeah. It's right. If they got any left, and they do usually. So
Hey, I've done that before.
you have good. Good. This was one of my favorites. Double-bitted axes didn't come out until about 1900. And, you know, for the reason, well, people say, well, you go in the woods, you walk 5 miles into the woods, and let's say you take a chip out of your axe, your bit. That's no good. Well, you had a double-bitted. But it took a special person to hone this down to sharpen it right. And you'll find that a lot of them, they would sharpen one bit a certain way to limb the tree, and then the other one might be for felling the tree. And it was a lot of it into a preference. Now, these axes are hard to make. It took an experienced forger 5 years of running a turf hammer to make an axe. Only 1 out of every 5 could make a double-bitted axe. They were that much trickier to make. And probably only 15 to 20% of all axes were made as double-bitted. But when you get into collecting, a lot of people say, oh, well, I only want double-bitted. And it's like, well, okay, each his own, you know, it's like. So I found this one. This is another double-bitted 4 1/4 pound from Dunedge Tool. Now, Dunedge Tool went out of business in 1921, so you're talking 104 years ago minimum. This one is very nice because, like I said before, a lot of people took care of their axes. They would hone them, they'd polish them. You took care of it. You slept with it side of your bed. This one had made probably a cedar box for the axe to go in, and that's how much they cared for them. When you're in the lumber camps, for example, you would stand in line and you would go through and they would give you an axe in one hand and a handle in the other, and you fit your own handle onto the axe. Why? Because you had a preference on how you wanted it done, the feel of it, the angle of the way that the handle went in, so that you could make the best of your day. The little tricks and trades that are gone today that, you know, what do you do? I did bring a few miscellaneous things that are very nice. This here is a double-bitted axe, 1 1/2 pound. They made down to a 1 pound. These are very choice. This is what they call a surveyor's axe or a spotting axe, and they would take it and put it on their belt, and they would go through, because you didn't need a big one. When you're marking trees, when you're a surveyor, all you got to do is put a little bit of mark in them, you know, to take the bark off, to spray paint them or whatever, enough so that you could get your lines, your property lines if you're a surveyor. This one here is a fire axe. This came from another one of the companies that did a specialty axes in Oakland, and these come in different weights. They come up to like 6 to 7 pounds in weights. And for a fire axe, that's pretty heavy, because you're doing more like cutting through a roof or doing things. Whereas in a woodsman, if you're cutting down a tree, the common weight is like 3 1/2, 3 3/4 pounds. So this is a little bit different. This is a fireman's axe, and this one here is a little bit different. It has a flatter spike on the back. It's also a fireman's axe, but it's a fireman's as a forest fire fighting axe, because what you do is use it like a grub hoe to dig into the ground to cut through roots. So it's a little bit different, but almost the same. Okay, I probably should show you the 3 most important things that Oakland is noted for, and I can show you these here. This is an embossed axe. It has a pressed design in it. Now, some people, there's 2 different methods of doing this. Either acid etched, where they put oil on it and like Vaseline, and then they put acid in and it eats it through, or one that goes through with a stamp that rolls this out. Now, this has 2 different designs on it. It has incised letters, in other words, they're gouged in, and then it has raised letters. So I've argued with different axe collectors because I'm always been told that this is an embossed axe. And they said, no, it's an acid etched axe. And I says, look at it again. And then they don't have any comment. And I go, okay. These acid etched axes, or embossed axes as I call them, were probably done away with by 1940s, World War II era, because it didn't serve any purpose. It didn't cut any better. It was more expensive, more extensive process, extra steps in the operation, so it cost them more to make. Did it do any better? No, because they had come out with paper labels quite a few years before, so when you do the paper label, you take it out in the woods, it wears off in the first day, you don't really care. You could complain about it if, you didn't like the axe, but this way, at least if the name was still on there, you could say a year down the road, oh, that dang axe that isn't worth and I'll never buy another one, and that type of thing. But the embossed axe, this company in West Waterville, so it predates 1883. It's the only axe company in the state of Maine that did an embossed axe. So we're very proud to have that. Now there are other axe manufacturers or hardware stores that have an embossed axe down in Portland area. We found a couple of different ones, but they aren't a Maine axe company because they had somebody else make them. So that's one of the three major things in Oakland. This is another one. This come from Bert Forrester Dixfield, and I can show you the letters because usually I ask people and they say, oh, Bangor Fire Department, Belfast Fire Department. A fire department wouldn't use an axe like this with letters on the back. They would have the spike or whatever on the back. So we get to joking around a little bit, and the person that had this was the manager of Diamond International for years, and it came out of his house. And he passed away, and his wife had gone to church, and she got up and spoke, and she says, well, I'd like to have somebody clean out my damn garage. It's just irking me to death. And it's like, so a couple volunteered, and they went and they picked out some suitcases of tongue depressor and different medical supply kits that Bert Forrester Dixfield, the Diamond Match, had made, and the things in there, they shouldn't have been thrown away, and we got some of it. A lot of it went to the dump. But the people that cleaned out the garage says, well, we got this axe, it's got writing on it. And I says, okay, does it have writing like, on the top? Yeah, well, yeah, and they were trying to explain, and they didn't have any idea. Well, when I got to see the axe, then I looked at it and bingo, I knew exactly. It's a log marking axe. So in other words, when they'd cut the logs and they'd put them in the river before they do, they'd mark the end of the axe so that you'd have the initials in it. So when it goes down river, then you're going to know exactly whose logs it is. But here's the thing. This is Bert Forrester Dixfield. You didn't send hardwood down the river. You sent only softwood. Bert Forrester Dixfield only dealt with birch because they would make hardwood popsicle sticks, tongue depressors, anything made out of birch. And I've got several pictures of huge piles of birch and everything. So I don't know what they've done. I think what happened, and I think I pull a Jurassic Park moment because you kind of have to analyze and figure out what probably went on. I think up the river, up Kennebec River Valley, they would buy a woodlot and they would have it cut, and they could run the softwood down the river and mark it, and then they would have to haul the birch in by truck or train. So I think that's and nobody's come up with any better explanation, but it's very unusual to find this, and I was honored to get this, to keep it in Oakland, because Bert Forrester Dixfield went out in 1946. So there was a short-lived company, but somebody else bought them out and carried it on. Now, I've seen PV, I've seen Great Northern Paper, I've seen other initials from Maine axe companies, but I've never seen but this one. So this is the second one that's really close to, being, so that you can't replace it. Now, I have a third item. This is one of the better ones, if you want to call it better. I've seen 15 or 20 of these. I've only seen one of that log marking axe. And when they did the interview for Down East Magazine, she says, which is better? And I says, that one. But this is historically significant. When Teddy Roosevelt came by train to Waterville, he stopped off for probably just a meet and greet, and an Oakland axe company went to greet him and presented him with their creation of a axe with a knife in the handle. And this, like I said, I've seen many of them, but when he left, he was waving it wildly out the window. He loved it. He loved it because he was like Henry David Thoreau. He loved to go camping. He was on his way up to Bangor and then off into the woods. So he loved it. And he loved it so much that when he got back to Washington, he had other sons, and he wrote on White House stationery to the King Axe Tool Company, can I have another one? Like for his other son. And they said yes. So they gave him another one. They sent it off to him. So this, historically, yeah. And worldwide or across the U.S., everybody says, oh, have you got a presidential axe? Well, yeah, I got one. It's like, and I take it as no big deal, but that's the other thing that, in Oakland. And the thing that I found out just recently, a year ago, we know that the King Axe Tool Company is the one that created it. And he's the one that did the one with the welding on the head and different variations, because he was always trying to keep, one step ahead. And I found out that the King Axe Tool did not present it to Teddy Roosevelt. The mayor did, Mayor Haynes, and maybe security or whatever, but at least Teddy Roosevelt found out who gave it to them, so when they wrote to them, they knew they bypassed the Mayor Haynes and got the right contact. And politics is good sometimes, so I don't know. But those are three of the real important items. I did come across this one about a year ago. This, a little bit different. Anybody want to take a stab on this? No pun intended. It is what we refer to, or I've referred to, as a cattle killing axe. Everybody says to me, no, it's not. So they looked it up in the catalog, and there's a company in Canada that made one just like this. They call it a butcher's axe. Yeah. And they would use it for beef, livestock, hogs, whatever. This one has been refinished, and they did a wonderful job, because the ones that I've seen before, this part, the pole that gets struck so many times, would crack and split and roll over. And they did a wonderful job. And I've only seen a half a dozen of these. So I was real pleased to get one of these. So, but anytime anybody's got questions, don't hesitate to just shoot them out. I got a few more things that I want to go over. And I brought this, and like as I told Jan earlier, this hasn't seen the light of day in quite a while, because I haven't had it too long, but it's a little bit different. This is a mortising axe. Now when you're building like log cabins or post and beam barns, and you're trying to make a hole in the wood to put the pegs in or whatever, this is why this is narrowed down, and it has advantages. They had different depths and different widths on them, but and this is not Oakland. I apologize. So, I have to kind of historically sometimes, because everything is connected a little bit. These items, and I had showed this to Waterville here a month ago when I got it. It kind of goes along with this one. And I was kind of happy to get this. This is a small hatchet. And I could make out most of the name on it, but until I cleaned it up, I couldn't tell what it really said, but I thought it said Peavy. Famous name up in Bangor area, right? Well, this one is Orren Peavy, O-R-R-E-N. So I got on the internet, and they've done a wonderful job. Orren Peavy's father was Joseph Peavy, the one that did the famous cant dog. Now the cant dog that Joseph Peavy, he didn't invent it, it was already used, but what he did was they had the spike in the bottom, they had this on here, a band around there, but they had a ring on there. And the ring is what would attach this dog that would go up and down. But the problem was with the ring, when you pull and pushing the log, it would swing around and grab you in the back of the leg. And it was very dangerous to use. So what he did was he invented the part that comes out flat so that this dog could only go up and down, which is a great accomplishment. And they had less injuries, they got more work done, they loved it. Now this Orrin Peavy is a son, but one of the grandsons went on, and you see how this is in two pieces? He modified it even further and made it a one-piece socket from there to there, so it gave it more strength. Because if you've ever used a cant dog, lots of times you'll break the end off because it starts getting smaller. So they kind of go hand in hand. So I kind of liked getting this. And I also found that Joseph Peavy, when he had Orrin, this was his fourth son. They had 12 kids. Some documents say 13, but of the 12 kids, there were 4 sets of twins. So I thought, whoa. So I was researching the part of Joseph Peavy. He had this son when he lived in Canaan, Maine, not 10 miles from my shop. So I'm thinking, okay. So it was soon after that that he moved up to the Bangor-Orono area and kind of proceeded, you know, but a lot of his sons were blacksmiths, so that's why this one comes in as Orrin. And it's like just fascinating when I got into a little bit more history on that. And then I've got all kinds of little goodies to see here. They gave away pens, pencils, that type of thing. These stamp blocks to print the axe labels. And some of them can be quite colorful. I guess they're in my other book. There they are. They're hiding on me today. But these stamp blocks, they didn't start paper until like 1870, 1880, because paper was expensive to do, printing was expensive, but they would get a stamp, a metal stamp that would put the name in, but then they found that those were getting expensive, so they came up with paper labels. But by doing this, if you had a 2-colored paper label, you had to have 2 stamp blocks, one of one design and one of the other. If you had a 3-color, you had to have 3 stamp blocks, one of each design, because it isn't like today you turn on a fax machine in 3.2 seconds you got a perfect 3 or 4D printed picture, whereas back then it's like things took time. And there's a guy, and he just moved, and I think he's in Wisconsin, and he's got hundreds of these. He does not have any from Oakland. And I've been in communication from him. He told me exactly, he's set up in his garage, printing presses and everything. He's into the old style. He told me exactly what machine you needed to have to print these. He sent me a picture of the state of Maine with every town that he knows that has somewhat of a printer like that, and he told me, it was way over my head, but he told me exactly what I needed to do. And, you know, yes, you got a question?
Talking about paper, why do they cut more trees in Maine? For paper products, for firewood, or lumber?
Good question. Probably lumber, although, you know, paper is a big industry. You see, when the settlers came over from England, the first thing that they did, the English claimed everything, and they would mark all of the trees, especially down in Bath, all along the Kennebec River, because they had never seen trees grown so tall as our pines did. So they would mark them, and it was a huge fine, and you get in trouble, you get thrown in jail and everything if you cut one of those trees with the English marking on it. Now, the other thing that they had to modify, when they came with these huge axes over from Europe, they didn't work good here. Why? We have different species of wood. So that's another reason why they had to modify and change the methods and the types of tools that we have. So
I have a couple things to tell you. Up the road a half mile, I don't know what kind of tree it is, but this tree trunk, a little bigger than a tire on a tractor trailer truck. That's the oldest one in Maine I heard. And you ever heard of bumper sticker?
Yeah, yeah,
Gregory, that's a slippery elm. It's the oldest slippery elm in
yeah,
the state.
yeah.
Right up
And if you've ever cut elm, it's very, very hard. And if you ever split it, oh my God, it just like, it's stringy. It just doesn't want to split and fall apart like a crisp piece of maple or something. So, yeah. Any other questions?
You have a number of the varieties of axes.
Do you mean like as in representative of the different companies?
Just the varieties in and of themselves.
Yeah, because I've got, there's some patterns that I do not have that I want to get. Of the 21, 22 different axe companies, I've got 16 different axe companies represented with an example from that company. I'm not done yet, but, and
Send us a wish list.
well, some of them are very hard to come by. You know, what do? You just keep looking. And they keep popping up.
Tell people that you're looking.
Right, and
They
there's
go to yard sales and they find it.
right, and it's like this cant dog that came in. When I took it in to show Jess, I said, yeah, "Have you ever seen it?" Because it has Clinton Clausen's name on there, and it was presented by the Bangor JCs, and so I did a little bit of a avenue, and I went. Governor Clausen was the first governor elected to a 4-year term. That was when they changed it. It was, and he died in office of December of that year, but it was also the first year or only year that we had 4 governors that year, because Muskie was in, but he got called into the Senate in January, so he left early. Another guy from, I guess, the Speaker of the House had to be sworn in for a few days until Governor Clausen-elect could get sworn in, like the 7th of January. Then he dies the end of January, and they had to swear in another governor, John Reed, to finish the term. Then John Reed got elected, so that was the year that there was 4 governors, and it was the first year that they went to a 4-year term. So there's a lot of little history there. So I wanted to make sure that, and see what I could find from Jess that day. So it's like, so you get off onto tangents, and there's all kinds of, like I can give you a project and you a project, and everybody can take it that much further. Another avenue that I got into, not proud of, but I do. I got into baseball bats. Oh God, how did I get into baseball bat? Well, these axe companies didn't make their own handles. Now, they had other companies that were specialized in handles. A lot in the western Maine. I've gotten into baseball bats because they made handles. I've got 21 different baseball bats made in Maine. And there's some that I don't have in that, so I get a little. But one of the reasons I got into it is because I got a Jackworth handle right out of Clinton, Maine, and they made baseball bats too. Why? Because they had the length of the wood, they had the wood, hardwood, and they could make all kinds of different things. There was a guy down in Anderson and Company down in Cumberland area, and I found a baseball bat because I was collecting bats. But I also found out he made lobster traps and he made snowshoes. And I thought, wow. And then it got on to that, found out that he made lobster traps. At one time, he was the largest manufacturer of lobster traps this side of the Mississippi River. And so then I found another Anderson bat, and I went down and presented it to Cumberland Fairgrounds, to the museum. And then since then, somebody came in with a pair of snowshoes. So one thing, you drop a seed, and then it grows, and it helps everybody. We all come out the winners. But yeah.
Lobster traps take up a lot more room for collection.
Well, now, right, but now they've gone to the metal ones.
Right.
So, you know, this is another era, and you almost can't find a wooden lobster trap now.
And the wooden ones look so much better.
Yes. But it was the way you had to steam them, and it was a lot of work. Snowshoes are the same thing. But like I said, these companies were trying, you know, the darndest to salvage what lumber they had. In fact, I've got another hat, dovetail baseball hat. Anybody heard of that before? That's a newer company up in Shirley, Dover Foxcroft area. Well, he was a furniture cabinet maker. and he had all this extra lumber. Well, what are we going to do? Well, he got talking with people. Well, why don't you make some baseball bats? So he did. And he is incredibly good at it. And he's got some major league players that go after him. He was doing a maple and birch. And birch was unusual because birch will absorb a little bit of the shock like an axe handle should. And then he's done away with, I think, the birch now, but he's doing rock maple and ash. And so his bats are like $150, $200 plus, but he's having no problem selling them. So, yeah.
You haven't said anything about the big axe.
The big,
Have up there, the big one on the corner.
oh. Wow, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. Well, this one has a little bit of a story. I was contacted by the Lions Club in Oakland, and a husband and a lady come out and says, well, yeah. Oh, I guess it was after I had been in the Sentinel for the pictures, and they kind of wanted to catch a little bit of, wind and go for it. So I says, well, yeah, I'll go do a talk. So they came out and they go, oh, yeah, I like this one. You're going to take this one. Oh, yeah, okay. She wanted this one. Well, I didn't know. So I went to the Lions Club, did the program. I didn't take this one. Well, I only took, 8 to 10 axes because she only wanted 15 to 20 minutes. And I says, that's fine. She says, where's my axe? And I go, which one did you? And she described it. I says, oh, sorry. So every time that I do this, I usually try to bring certain ones. And like the ones that I would bring every time is the embossed one, the log marking axe, and the presidential axe, because those are the 3 cream of the crop ones. But this one is a turf axe. Turf. Sod houses out west. The Adobe Indians, the people out there would build sod and they could cut. It's sharp on 2 sides. They also said that an axe of this type could be used in cranberry bogs. But you don't see it in this area. That's why they were made, but they were shipped out. So
Back in the day, it's in our book, there were houses that I think the Italians who were working on the railroad, and they had like round huts. I wonder if they could use something like that to make it.
Yeah.
To look like a.
Yep.
That is sharpened on 2 edges.
2 sides, yeah, because you could pull it towards you a little bit and kind of cut through. Sod can be a little bit difficult, but you wouldn't need it sharpened on the top side, but yeah. I don't know how many different sizes or different weights they've made. I've only seen 3 or 4, but as long as I get one for the collection, then...
Was that made around here? Or?
That was made in Oakland. It is made in Oakland, and it's in the catalog.
Yeah.
The catalog I've got is a picture in there. There's, they picture everything. If you follow us at all on Facebook, I put quite a little bit of stuff there, like these catalogs that I've got, and I've reproduced and photocopied them in here. But when you get into them, there's 1 or 2 that from Dunedge Tool, and I got into it because they're kind of colorful. And a guy from Portland had gone ice fishing a few years ago, and he found these printing plates that are aluminum, and they're about yay big, like 2 by 3 feet. And he found 2 of them. They were inside the walls of an ice fishing shack. Somebody had wallpapered the inside, and he knew that they were better than that, so he got them and salvaged them and just gave them to us this last year. So just this last week, I put those on Facebook on our Oakland Historical Society page, and a lot of people said, wow, where did you find that? So there's things out there that need to be salvaged, So
They've old enough to get it all.
well, we can't save everything, but and history is to be preserved, and we're not changing history. And for example, we got into it a few years ago. Guy up in Canada, nice guy. we wrote back and forth, we telephoned back and forth, and he did a nice job. He wanted information on Witherell Axe Company, so I gave him all I knew. And he gets done, and he prints this Early American Tool Industries, which is a prestigious catalog or newsletter in the country, and he printed it, and it's like, I read it, and I go, that's not what I told you. And so I kind of questioned it. So we got on the phone one day, and I said, Alan, I says, this isn't what I told you. And he goes, well, no, this, and this. And I says, but that's not true. But he says, it sounds better, doesn't it? And I'm going, oh my God. And I kind of lost a little bit of steam on that. And to give you an example, I make this analogy. Let's say you grew up in a family and you had 3 brothers and sisters. And your mom, dad's gone, and then the obituary comes out in the paper and it says you had 2 brothers or whatever. No mention of. So how are you going to feel? We're not trying to rewrite history. We're trying to accurately record it the way it was. Give credit where credit's due. That's what we're doing with this collection.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's so much history that's gone and not appreciated that, you know. So where do you go? Any other questions? Yes?
There's a lot of controversy over the origination of Paul Bunyan.
I can't hear you, yes.
Paul Bunyan.
Yes.
Does Maine claim Paul Bunyan, or is he a Western?
I think, is it Wisconsin or Minnesota that claims him? We do claim him. There's a lot of folklore along with Babe His Blue Ox. So, but I think it's wonderful that Bangor has that statue, and they were trying to do more on it. You know.
Something I've wondered for a while, being out west, they've got statues from Washington over, and I'm like, I always thought it was a Maine thing.
Oh yeah, he made the Great Lakes by walking, and all the other stories, and we know that a lot of it. But Bangor was known as the lumber capital of the world for a long time. Penobscot River is deeper than the Kennebec, as far as they could run ships all the way from Bucksport right up through to Bangor and harbor, so they had an advantage. So yeah, you know, what do you do?
Where they have these totem poles that have one head on top of another one.
The totem poles?
So I've seen pictures of these totem poles have one head on top of another
Yeah.
one. Where are they?
There's one near Freiburg Fairgrounds that's a campground over there. I can't remember the name of it, but there used to be one in Canaan, but I'm not sure.
Have you seen that tall wooden Indian up in Skowhegan?
Yeah,
Is that a totem pole?
well, it is. That's a Bernard Langlis sculpture, and they've given some. I want you to take one of those, and I want you to pass them around.
I've heard that it might be torn down. Is that?
Well, yeah, they've got a few of his sculptures too at Hinckley Schools, and there's a lion, and yeah, they're made out of pine, and they deteriorate. They've got to be kept and taken care of. So, what do you do? But okay, any questions?
Yeah,
What?
this might be stupid,
No, nothing stupid.
but what makes me wonder is if you have a real heavy axe, you take a swing, you'll make a good pass. But a man won't last very long.
That's-
What's the advantage of making it so heavy to begin with?
Well, one is species of axe. Species of wood. The theory is the heavier the axe, the more work you can get done. A lot of it has to do with sharpening the axe. So, we good?
No, I was reinforcing what you were saying.
Yes. So, like me, I would prefer a 3 to a 3.5 pound axe. You, probably a 4 pound axe. Yeah, you probably would be stronger as far as being driving it right into the wood. And they go up to like 4.5, 5 pounds, even into 6 pounds. But when you get to the heavier ones, are they really that much more efficient? And like I said, when they found how to balance the weight of the axe with a handle, you didn't need as much metal. It was cheaper to make, but the person lasted a lot longer because they didn't get as tired, and you got more work done. But the key to a lot of it is sharpening the axe.
Work smarter, not harder. How many people work? axes, you put them back over here. Right. That seems to me quite dangerous.
It is. You got to know what you're doing.
I dared to use a two-headed axe, and I have used
Right.
axes.
If you took one of these and put it over, would you cut your back? Well, you got to know your tool. You got to know how to do it. These axe throwing contests, people that do these, like you could use this one, and they go over and I go, oh, be careful. But, you know, it is what it is. So, anyway, did everybody get an axe?
Yeah, I did.
Has anybody got any questions? Okay, I got a little axe oath that I'm going to read, and you're going to repeat after me. So, it goes like this. I'm going to say I, and then you're going to state your name. So, I do solemnly swear to tell everyone of this exciting info. She's got it. That I handled today. And if you take care of your tools, they will take care of you. Tools are meant to be used, not leaned on. And I promise to do no harm to anyone, friend or foe, for as long as I live. I will not point a tool at anyone, and I will not chop down the neighbor's power pole, or I will not cut down the in-laws' fence. I will try to use my head to make a better community by offering to mow my friend's lawn and help them cut their firewood or help chopping the winter hay for the farm while being watched over by the axe gods. Not following this advice may go one of two ways. A good bit or a bad bit. The poll that we conducted says that cops might pay a visit for bad conduct. And the good, it might free up a few seats at the local Dunkin' Donuts coffee shop. There you go. But in the spirit of working towards making axe history, to be not forgotten, I can certify all of you as tool history specialists. There you go. I had fun at this. What?
You say I won't chop down the neighbor's fence. What about the in-laws fence?
I didn't.
Outlaw.
I didn't write this 100%. I did this a few years ago, and it was in Oakland, and it went over wicked good. There was a gentleman, man that brought in his son and his daughter, and his daughter was like 7 years old, a little squirmy in the seat and everything, and the 5-year-old son was just a perfect gentleman. A lady dropped a pencil or something, he picked up, he says, there you go, man, perfect gentleman. The girl, when I started saying that, says, well, you will not torment your brother or sister, and she starts giggling right out. Well, I'm thinking, okay. So then the crowd kind of, toned down a little bit, and then something else, and she giggled out again. We got done. And it was really funny. And then the father comes up to me and he says, how did you know? And I says, her impish grin. And it's like, you could tell exactly. So it was fun. But any other questions?
You made a mistake. You said it's wicked good. How can it be wicked and good?
There you go. One thing that I might not have brought up is, I kind of bypassed this and I apologize. These are salesmen's hay knives. Now, these salesmen's hay knives are something that they did a lot of in Europe. And you think about back when they were traveling salesmen, how did they travel? By train, and they traveled with tools in a trunk. So it was much easier to carry a smaller version with them. Now, this particular pattern with a zigzag on it, this was not pattern you stick into a machine. They were all chalked, and a guy would go along and go zzz, 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 and just cut that design. This pattern was invented by a guy down in Boothbay Harbor, Maine. And what he did was he ended up selling it to Clark and Parsons, and then they ended up selling it to the company in Oakland, Dun Edge Tool. Now, I did bring one other Clark and Parsons item that is a machete, and it's marked Clark and Parsons, East Wilton, Maine on there. Now, this has the original horn handle made out of a cow's or steer's horn. And along that same line that I didn't say earlier, North Wayne Tool, when they were in business in North Wayne, Maine, during the Civil War, they made in excess of 10,000 swords for the Union Army. And it sounds kind of gory that, you know, you're trying to do that, but that was the name of the tool business. You know, you had the iron, you steel, that was your job, that's what you did. So, but any other questions? I love that. Ooh, there you go. Good, 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 good.